Hello my gorgeous loves out there and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to do an updated version of my top 3 palettes in every palette category. I did a video like this years ago and I felt like we needed a new version because a good amount of the palettes have changed and there are some that have stayed the same. But before we get into this video, if you're new here, hello, welcome. My name is Bri and I'm just a crazy lover of all things beauty and I like to host a lot of fun and colorful makeup content. I like to do a lot in indie makeup, so if that is what you're into, then please hit that subscribe button and join this little family. But with that being said, let's get into this video. I ultimately was inspired to do this video from Angelica Nikovic. So when I did it years ago, I saw a video from her years ago where she did her top 3 in all these different palette categories. So I think the original video was just top 3 palettes ever, like in your entire collection. And she was like, I could not just narrow it down to 3. And I was like, I feel you on that. So I ended up doing a video like that, but I did add like additional categories. So I felt like it was time to do a new updated version, but we're gonna go over all of them and go over all of the different categories. Now, before we get into everything, if you're curious about this eye look, I did film it. Of course, it's with the Unearthly Cosmetics Charmer palette from their Valentine's Day mystery box. So if you're curious, that is what I used. I love how it came out. I also have the lippy from the Charmer box, the blush. That video should already be up. I'll link it below. I'll put it in the corner if you want to see how I put this together. So now let's get into the different categories. So the first category is top 3 neutral palettes. And I think only one is the same in this category, but of course it's the Blend Bunny Cosmetics The Doll House palette. One of my most favorite nudie palettes ever. I'm sure I've mentioned that many times on my channel. I love traveling with this. I love taking it to work. It does have some muted colors, but then it has some warm neutrals, some cool neutrals. I love the monochromatic rose, and then I still have color to play with if I want to do something olivey or a little berry tone, a little like deep green moment, but overall it leans on the nudie side with some pops of muted color, but this is so good. And then the ones that are different from the last video is this one from Glaminatrix, the Nearly Natural Palette. This is a stunner. This is like glam nudie makeup. There's a few muted colors in here, but this is the kind of palette you could use for a wedding or a special event. If you're wanting to look like nudie glam, that's the vibe I get from this palette. I love that it leans a little bit more cool tone. It's beautiful. The shimmers are stunning and sparkly and creamy. The mattes are pigmented and blendable. I could totally see this being something I would wear to a special event if I'm going for the more muted, nudie, glam kind of vibe. And then a very new one that I have used so much since I last tried it on camera, but it's the Flying Fiddles palette from Beaute Cosmetics. I was not expecting to gravitate towards this one so much, but I have used this for date night, for going out with my friends. I use this for work many times. I love the like rich browns in here, the beautiful like metallics. You have a little bit of green in here, a little bit of a cool tone mauve moment, but I don't know, something is so beautiful about this palette. The mattes are really nice in here and pigmented. And the sparkly shades are easy to work with. They're not too thick, they're not too textured, they're creamy and gorgeous. And you also have some like kind of goldy green shades in here because I love using like browns and then going in with a olivey gold shifty shadow just to bring in a little bit of a green moment. But then you have this like forest green shade here too. It just greens and browns go really well together. If you don't want to do like an extreme green look, pull in some brown mattes, some like brownie metallics, and throw in like a pop of a limey olive green or a limey green in the inner corner. It's so fun to do that if you want just a fun little pop of green, but just not a total monochromatic green look. But I was very impressed by this. Then the next category is top colorful palettes. And this, I think, is all different from my last video. Like there's no repeat palettes, but the first one for sure is the Resurrection palette from Wicked Widow Beauty. This is probably my most favorite colorful palette in my collection. I was just really blown away by the quality of this palette. The mattes are just beautiful, buttery, smooth, creamy, blendable, pigmented, like everything you would want in a matte is in this palette, as well as these beautiful metallics. They're very shifty, sparkly, intense. You have multi-chromes, dual chromes in here. They're just so striking and beautiful on the lids. And I love that there's like these warm, grungy tones, these cool tones, the grays in here. You got a little bit of pastel. You have this beautiful kind of off-white shade that can lighten things up. Beautiful inner corner highlights. Like, oh, I just love the setup and everything about this. It is the best. And then the next one is the Rick and Morty palette from Glamlite. I think both of these palettes were really high on my ranking from last year. This was actually #1. That's how much I love the Resurrection palette. And maybe this was like 3 or 4. It was really, really high up there too. But this is probably my most favorite palette from Glamlite. But look at these tones. There's so much color in here, some neon vibes. You got the cool tones, the warm, the grunge. You got some pinks and purples. I thought the mattes were really good in here. And I love the metallics. They're very creamy and sparkly. And everything just coordinates so well together. I like the setup. I like the options. I don't think anything is too repetitive in here. You have like some good lighter greens, some deepening shades. You got a black, a deep black metallic. You have lighter shades to work as inner corner highlights. You got mid-tones. You basically have everything you need to do a really colorful look. I think the only color really missing in here is like a true yellow. But besides that, you pretty much have everything else you need. There's also not maybe a true red in here either. But for the most part, you have most of the colors in here, and it's a very good. Then the next one is very new to my collection, but is already a huge favorite of mine. It's the Gourmand Girls Nueva Vida palette, the collab with Steph from Steph's Beauty Stash. She did an amazing job with this color story. It's bright, it's vivid. We got neon shades in here. We got some pastels, really intense foil, shifty metallics like this green. Oh, I love it so much. You even have a cool tone kind of brown here. You've got depth. You got things to work as inner corner highlights like this iridescent shade right here. You also have this beautiful pinky satin. I love that. And you can go a lot of different directions with this. And I just adore this color story and the quality in here. So if you want to go bright and neon, you can. If you want to get a little darker, you can. You want to go purple, pink, green, do something fiery and orange and pink, you can do that. I just love it. So now going on to the next category, which is top 3 palettes that are mini palettes. The first one I have here is a repeat from the last video. It's the Oud palette from what is it? Oud and Zai. I had a moment here where I forgot, but this is a smoky green kind of monochromatic palette. It is so special to my collection. I don't think I have any greens quite like this. Like this smoky blackened green is so beautiful. It's such a stunning metallic. Then these beautiful mattes to pair with it. You have a split pan. This makes a perfect inner corner highlight, and this is kind of like a grayishy blue, but it goes with the mattes really well. And I have adored this palette for so long. If it gets too old, I would totally repurchase this. I hope they still sell it. I will be devastated if they don't, because there's just something special about the green tones in here and why it's been a favorite mini palette of mine for so long. And then the other one I have is the Clionadh Deep Sea Treasures palette. I could have totally put this in the all shimmer palette category, but this has 8 beautiful, intense, multi-chrome, shifty metallics. Even this like black, like base one is gorgeous. Then there's like this orange one that goes like hot pink. You have that olivey green gold. You have some greens and purples. This is like their high quality shimmer formula, similar to like their stained glass collection. You get it in this beautiful curated palette. I love to travel with this. I love to pair this with like all matte palettes. I love to use this at work. I just want to have some special shimmers to pair with mattes. This is just a good one to do that with. I love this palette. I will definitely take this on future trips with me because it just gives me a nice little fun palette that has all these special metallics that I can pair with other palettes. And this is a favorite, my favorite little mini all shimmer palette. And then the last one here is the Wicked Widow Beauty. This one has 8 shades too, so it is on the smaller side. It's a little bit more grungy, but I thought like this was a really well-rounded palette for being mini, because you could go to the purples, you could do the greens, you could use the orange and like this kind of mustardy, kind of greenish yellow, do something a little grunge. You could just go different directions for a smaller palette. And the quality is really good from Wicked Widow. The mattes were nice and pigmented. The shimmer's nice and sparkly. You have even this beautiful smoother one that makes a gorgeous inner corner highlight. You have like this deeper one that maybe leans a little more satiny, and then these super foiled sparkly ones. This is really good. And then we're going on to the next category, which is favorite monochromatic palettes. And I kind of struggled with this one. I went back and forth on what to put in this category, but I was able to narrow it down. I think maybe one or two is the same from the previous video, but for sure, I think I mentioned this in the last one, the Dirty Martini palette from Glamlite. This is probably my favorite green monochromatic palette in my collection, because I think the tones are just really interesting, and I love that they mix it up with like olive tones with like aqua tule tones, and you have like just some depth, like these like kind of bluish greens. You have some other like fun goldy shades. I just think it was interesting and beautiful and really well done for a monochromatic palette. I don't find it boring or redundant. I just like that you can go into different green directions, maybe something more cool tone and bluish, or something a little bit more warm and olivey and grunge. Like this is a well-rounded monochromatic green palette because you can go those different directions in the green sphere, if that makes any sense. Very good quality. I really love this collection from Glamlite. It was one of my favorite, their happy hour collection. So I figured I'd also mention the wine palette, another favorite of mine. This is a purple monochromatic palette that has a little bit of like berry tones mixed in, but overall it's just a very purple palette. And there's even this interesting kind of taupey shade down here. You have purples that are leaning a little bit more pink, purples leaning a little bit more reddish, and then some more cool tone purples. So you do have a good amount of options in the purple realm, even like this more bluish purple. And then these different like purple metallics, like the pinky one right here, the cool tone, deeper ones. This is really beautiful if you're into like berry purple shades. So I was like, I have to mention this one. This is so good. I'm telling you, the happy hour collection was really good from Glamlite. And then the last monochromatic palette is the Gothic palette, which is pretty new to my collection. I got it at the end of last year, but this is like a berry purple monochromatic palette, kind of similar to like the wine palette. It just has a little bit less shades. There's some like burgundy tones, some pastels in here, these beautiful shades that work as inner corner highlights. You got a pinky mauve, then these purple tones, you have a black to deepen things up. So you can go a good amount of directions in the berry purple realm, but to me this is still a very monochromatic palette. You also have this really intense shifty was it a multi-chrome? It's like magenta to like gold. I think there maybe is a green shift to it. It's really creamy and striking and really high quality. I mean, Cosmic brushes, they make such good shadows at a more affordable price. Not like drugstore pricing necessarily, but definitely cheaper than a lot of other indie brands, but you get like super high luxury quality from their shadows. Then the next category we're going on to is top 3 affordable palettes. Now these could have easily been in the monochromatic palette category, but these just had to be in the affordable category because they're so cheap and so high quality. And it's the Beaute Bar palettes. They came out with all these monochromatic palettes in different sizes. So you could get 16 pan, I think there was a 9 pan, and then a even bigger one. I can't remember how many shades were in the bigger one, but the quality in these are so impressive, so high end, and the color stories are gorgeous. I think Beaute Bar nailed it with these, because I didn't love the Wilderness palette, but these, oh, these were like even better. Like, I was so impressed. Here's the Berries palette. Like, look at that. A beautiful pinky reddish dream. So good. The mattes are amazing. The metallics are amazing. Then there was the Midnight palette, which had a mix of blues and purples. Also just as good. And then the Earthy palette, which is similar to the Dirty Martini palette from Glamlite. A gorgeous green palette. There's not any real like bluish tones in here. It leans more olive and like these true grass greens, and then like some minty tones. But this is also a really good one, and one of my more favorite like monochromatic green palettes in my collection. But these were only $11. $11. Isn't that mind-blowing? And they always have sales on their palettes, which you could probably end up getting these for even cheaper. I've seen a lot of good sales on the Beaute Bar palettes, so these are really good. And then we're going to go to the best or top 3 high-end palettes, which it's mostly Natasha Denona. I don't really buy a lot of luxury palettes. I think Natasha Denona is like really the only brand, and Danessa Myricks that kind of piqued my interest, and I will be like more willing to pay the higher price tag. So my number 1 is the Metropolis palette, which I'm sure I mentioned in the previous video that I did. Probably my most used palette of all time within my collection. I recently was using this for work. I've traveled with it. It's just full of like nudie tones, grungy tones, and even the cream to powder shades are still creamy in here, and I've had this for a while. I love that there's like these deeper greens, a little bit of blue, we got a red moment, we got orange tones in here. I just think this is so high end, so good. One of my most favorite palettes probably from Natasha Denona. And then the gold palette would be my second favorite, which I'm pretty sure I also mentioned in the last video. But this has all these beautiful goldy tones. I love this one right here that has like a green shift to it. A little pops of green, like a, I guess teal or whatever you could call it. And all these more warm browns, and then these beautiful gold shades in here. This is gorgeous. If you want to do the most stunning gold look, this is a good one for that. And then the last one is from Danessa Myricks, the Lightwork, is it 5? The Transcendence palette. This was not their last holiday palette, it was the one from before that. It's an all shimmer palette, but this too I think is so worth the high-end price tag. I think it's over $100, and it's full of all these beautiful like multi-chromes and shifty shades. Then you have these chrome flakes and these chrome liners, which I thought these liners were pretty good. I don't use chrome flakes very often, but every now and then I'll top a little chromey flake on an eye look. But I totally thought this was worth the high-end price tag, and one of the like best like high-end palettes that I own. And then we're going on to the top 3 matte palettes, and honestly I only have 3 I think all matte palettes in my collection, so it was easy to pull this. Of course, the Blends palette from Blend Bunny, one of the best like all matte colorful palettes that I have. This is probably like the most bought palette from Blend Bunny. Everybody loves this. If I have like an all shimmer palette and I need some mattes, I'll pull this. Or if like the palette I'm using is just missing a certain color, I'll pull this. Like, this is so good. And then I have the Fruity Round palette from ItsBel. This is a fun, very bright, vivid all matte palette. Great if you want some bright, more neon leaning shades, but you do have some depth in here. This was to go with their Fruity Realm pigments. They pair perfectly with them, but this would also work really well with like multi-chromes and colorful all metallic palettes. Then the last palette is a Capricorn palette from Unearthly. It has Alien Cosmetics on it. because this is one of their older ones, but this one has a very interesting matte color story. Very different tones, a mix of some bright ones, some blues, we got some depth, but the quality is still amazing in this one. And I just find it really interesting and inspiring. Like I'll look at this and I'm like, oh, I want to do a different kind of color combo that I wouldn't think of, and then pair it with some of my fun metallics in my collection. I love this bright neon shade too, this yellow, this these tones are just different. And then we're going on to all shimmer palettes, which that was also easy for me to put together. I think I only have one that was from the last video, and it's the Break the Rules palette. I think this will always be one of my most favorite all shimmer palettes. This was my first palette from ItsBel, my first introduction to ItsBel. I love them. They make really high-end indie makeup that's on the more affordable side, but this is full of these rich, creamy metallics that are shifty and beautiful and stunning. Like, oh, they're still so good and still so vibrant and extra and sparkly, and I just love the different tones in here. So this will probably always be in this category. And then the two new ones is the All I Ever Wanted Unearthly Cosmetics Volume 2. Another super favorite of mine. I just love all shimmer palettes because you can just pair them with all different palettes. They're just easy to travel with because then you have all the special metallics that you would possibly need all in one palette. So I have traveled with this. I have taken it to work. There's all these different textures in here, different tones, the yellows, the orange, we got blues, purples, greens. And Unearthly is also a very good brand that makes stunning metallics. And then the Danessa Myricks Lightwork Volume, maybe this is Volume 5. I don't even know, but this is the I Am Magic palette. This was their holiday release from last year, and I love this one even more than the other one that I mentioned, this one from Danessa Myricks. This was also ranked really high in my ranking from last year because the metallics are stunning. And I totally think this is worth every penny. You get all these beautiful, intense metallics that if you bought individually from indie brands would cost like $15 to $20 a shade, but you get it all in this one palette for like $125. So I think it's totally a deal, and they're so beautiful. You have some satin, creamy leaning ones, some more flaky foiled ones, really sparkly. They're all shifty, and I just think the color options are excellent. You got blues and the purples, maroons, some fiery orangey shifty pink ones. Then we have one last category, which is my favorite pastel palettes, and I think all of these are new. They're not the same from the last video, and I think these are all new palettes to my collection. So of course it's the Blend Bunny Cosmetics Sickly Sweet palette, my most #1 favorite pastel palette in my collection. Nothing truly compares to how good this one is. The pastels are pigmented, but then they also included these deepening mattes, these beautiful foiled metallics in here that are lighter, and then some are darker. You got some bright pops in here, even like pastels that lean like pastel-y neon, which I love. They're so intense, they're gorgeous inner corner highlights, some of the best pastels that I've ever used. Then the next one, which is also very new to my collection, is the Spring Dragon palette from Oud Inside. This was a collab with Judy from their second Legendary Diversa collection. It's a curated pastel palette. Great for traveling. It's nice and curated, but has all these stunning pastels in here. And then she included a deeper brown. So if you want to go smoky and not stick to just pastels, you have that. You've got the yellows, the greens, the pinks, the purples, the blues. It's so pretty and it's so high quality. These pastels are very pigmented. The metallics are beautiful and sparkly. Just everything about this is so great. So if I need like a smaller palette to travel with, this will be my go-to little mini pastel palette. And then the last one, which is my newest pastel palette in my collection. And I was thinking about like, should I include this? And the more I thought about it, I do feel like this one is better than the other pastel palettes that are in my collection. So I had to include it. It's the Glaminatrix Pretty in Pastels palette. I just recently posted a video using this palette, and I've used it, I think, a few other times, or maybe 1 or 2 times off camera, but I was really impressed by this. Now, I do love the Blend Bunny one even more, but I still think this is a really good pastel palette. Now, I do feel like some of the shades lean a little deeper than a true pastel, at least for my skin tone. But like these are more pastel. I think this one leans on the more pastel end. Then the metallics in here are so beautiful and sparkly and shifty. All of them are so good. I think what I love most of all is the pastel shimmers that are in here, but that was all the different categories. My top 3 palettes and all of them. I think all of these are amazing and great and would just add to anybody's makeup collection because they're so good, so high quality. And I just had so much fun refilming this and seeing how some of my things have changed. But you guys will now have to let me know, what are your thoughts in the comments below? What would you put in these different categories? I would love to hear from all of y'all. And if you're new here and you enjoy this video, you like a lot of fun, colorful makeup content, you like a lot on indie makeup and all that good stuff, then please hit that subscribe button and join this little family. Also, don't forget to check out the description below. I will have all the palettes linked that are still available. I will link videos that I've done on any of these palettes if you want to see them in action, see different looks with them. And I will have my makeup linked. Like I said, I did film this video with the Unearthly palette. If you want to see how I did this, that video will be linked. And of course, like foundation and all that, in case you're curious on what I'm actually wearing on my face. And I will have my contact and my social media platforms. I'm also on Instagram as Breezy Lifestyle and Breezy_beauty. So if you want to join my Instagram fam, I would really, really love that. But guys, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, for being here, supporting my channel, being amazing. I just appreciate you guys all so much. And I just hope all of you are doing well wherever you are in the world. And just sending you guys so much light and love. But until next time, bye guys.